Hi guys, it's Kelly. I'm back with another video. Today Simon Says Stamp has a new release coming out. It's called Encouraging Words, and I'm going to be using a couple of new items from that. On the left is the Encouraging Animals, on the right is Thank You Teacher. The stencil is called the Caroline stencil, and then the Wonky Hearts is actually from another release. So here's my first attempt at making my stencil sticky. I used Elmer's repositionable spray adhesive. I just put it in an old mailbox, shake it up real good, and spray it. It smells. Make sure you do it in a well-ventilated area. And make sure you use it relatively quickly. I messed around getting my distressings together and doing things with my son and getting my placement. This is the largest die from that Wonky Hearts die set. So here's all the distressings I picked, just a nice rainbow order. And then when I started doing the ink blending, it wasn't sticking. I mean, it was not. You'll see it's moving all over the place. It's a very intricate die or stencil. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to go back to my old go-to, which is Tombow Mono Multi-Glue. Does it mean that I have to outline every single one of those lines? Pretty much. It takes about 5 minutes, but then I've never had to re-stick a stencil that I've done this with. So kind of worth it. I'm just going to line it back up exactly where I had it before. And when I used the Tombow Mono Multi-Glue, you saw that I kind of like tapped it off on my hands. And I do that just because sometimes it can be very sticky. But yeah, that's never let me down. That's always worked for me. And the Elmer's usually has too. This is the first time that it hasn't. So the only thing I just wanted to show you with the ink blending is I find that I get a better blend from my yellow to my green if I do it this way. So I've done the colors like from the top to the middle, and then from the bottom to the middle, and then I do the yellow. I didn't have really any issues with the Twisted Citron blending, and then I'm also sure they blended easier because I'm using Oxides. But if you are having trouble blending your yellow into like Mowed Lawn, which is usually what I'm using, try that. Try setting up the two colors alongside the yellow and doing the yellow last. If you decide to try the Tombow Mono Multi-Glue and you find that you have some stickies left over on your paper, usually for me it's pretty minimal, but I just go in with a white eraser and erase them up, and I've never had a problem. I'm going to put my die in place now and then run that through my Big Shot. You can keep the other piece to do another card with. I chose not to do that. I was just looking for that heart. So I'm going to stamp this, I mean, he's totally adorable. This little bear. I collected bears when I was a kid, so I guess I kind of just, I just have a natural love for them. They're just so cute. So he's holding this little flower, and I just thought he was so precious, and we're going to Copic color him. So I stamped that in intense black Simon Says Stamp ink because we are doing Copic coloring, and then I just pulled my full range of C markers. I have that bright rainbow colored heart. I wanted to make my bear pretty neutral. So I started with the lightest color, which is the C1. I'm really only going to use this on the inside of his ears, on his snout, and on his belly. I'm going to shade those same areas with the C3, and just a little bit of shading. I wanted them to be lighter than his body. And then I'm also going to use that C3 to start laying in the darkest shadows for my bear. I like to work with my lightest color first, because if I get the shading wrong, then I can go back in and fix it and it doesn't matter. And I also, because I am very heavy-handed with my darks, and I don't even know if that's true. I think I'm very heavy-handed with the first marker that I use, whatever that might be, if it's light or if it's dark. And if it's dark, then it's dark. I mean, there ain't no going back. I'd put down lots of the dark marker. So here I color as if my light source is in the top right hand corner, so all of my shading is going to be on my bottom left. I did add some additional shading underneath his belly there just to kind of give it more round look, like it's sticking out from his body. And then also adding little bits of shading to his ears. Really the darkest part is going to be where his arm is pressed to his body, because the arm on his right hand side, well, our right hand side, is behind his body, so that's not going to be casting any kind of shadow. His snout would be away from his body, so that would also have some shadow. The C9 is my darkest color, and I'm only adding that to my darkest areas, so really just on the left hand side. Then I'm going to start adding in more color and building out to the right hand side of the body. If you've watched me color before, you know I leave myself a extremely generous highlight because I want to make sure that I keep it intact at the end of the coloring. So blended the C7 out, and then really the C5 is going to be the main body color for this particular bear. So I'm leaving just a little bit on the right hand side to add that C3 to, which is going to be my lightest color. And then after I filled it all in, and well, it just seemed like the darks were really dark and that they weren't blending well into that C5. So this is, I colored the whole thing in. I'm going to go add a little bit more shading to his belly and then go over that with the C1 to make sure it's all blended. But then I am looking at it and you can just see those lines of that C7 and that C9. So I'm going to go back in and do another layer of C5. I mean, you hear me say all the time, like, just keep working at it till it looks like what you want it to look like. And in this case, just adding that little bit of C5 helped to blend it a little bit better. Now, the flower and his little ears, I didn't want to have to pull out multiple colors of markers for just these two little things, but I didn't want them to be mismatched, and I used abandoned coral as my red, so I figured I'd go with a more corally red for the flower. I'm just adding a little bit of shading from the center of the flower, and that's just really so that the intensity matches the intensity of that Distress ink background. And then originally I was going to color in his nose completely black with my pen, but I decided to add some shading. So I'm doing a C7 and then just a little bit of a C9. I'm leaving that kind of comma area as my highlight. And then I'm going to hit that with my white gel pen as well as add just a few little dots to the flower so it's a little more interesting. I always outline all of my images. If you've been here before, you know this is true. I cannot stop myself. The only exception is when I'm doing no line coloring. And even then, I kind of miss it, let's be honest. So I'm going to outline that whole thing, and then I'm going to fussy cut it. Frequently when I do videos, I cannot talk to you guys about fussy cutting because all of the coloring takes 800 years, and your grandchildren are in college by the time one of my videos is over. But today we have time, so we're going to talk about it. So basically, first things first, when you're fussy cutting, make sure that you cut your image down to a smaller piece of paper. It will tug on it. And then keep your scissors straight, move the paper with whatever your non-dominant hand is. So I cut with my right hand because that's my dominant hand, move the paper with my left. That's going to give you the smoothest cut. That way you have no little jagged edges or anything that's strange or awkward. And then if you do, and we all do, nobody's perfect, the way to hide that is to take a non-alcohol. You want non-alcohol because alcohol bleed into your images. So water-based marker, in this case I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black, and then just go around the edges. And then that will kind of mask any of the sharp edges you have. None of this is adhered down yet, but I put it into my Misty because A, I spent all that time making that background and I don't want to ruin it. B, this is the first time I've used this stamp, so I'm going to be very generous with the amount of time I take to ink it up in the Simon Says Stamp black ink. But if by chance I don't put good pressure down, I didn't get good coverage, what have you, the Misty will save me. But I nailed it in one shot. Winning at life here, people. So now I'm going to go ahead and use that Tombow Mono Multi Glue and adhere it as high as I can on my card. So the idea that I had with this little bear and this big heart, which you don't even have to add the bear. I think it's pretty just like that. But I thought it would be really cute if he was holding like this gigantic balloon. So I picked, and I realized when I showed you the marker I was zoomed out, so you don't know what that is. It's a B11. No, I'm lying. It's a B02. It's a B02. So anyway, I just used my pen to draw a little string on it. But the whole idea was that this bear would like love his teacher so much that he just wanted to bring him this big, enormous heart balloon that wouldn't even float. It was so huge. It's just almost hanging onto the ground. It's so enormous. So now I adhered him with Scotch foam tape, and I'm putting a shadow underneath him, and then I'm going to put a shadow underneath the balloon. Excuse me. Sorry, my sinuses have been mean to me today. But anyway, using the C1, C3, C5, except for when I did the shadow for the heart, which I'm making very large because it is a large heart. But I am going to have a darker area in the middle. I thought I was grabbing the C5. I wasn't. I was grabbing the C7. But, you know, it happens. And fortunately, the markers work well enough together that I was just to be able to go over that with the C3 and it blended out and it was totally fine. So I love the shadow. I love what it adds to the card. The next thing I'm going to do is help fill in that heart and accent the sentiment. So I'm using the Nuvo Crystal Drops in Ebony, and then I'm going to do just a couple of drops. This one that you saw me just do with the pause is because it kind of stretched itself out. Do not touch it while it's wet. Let it dry. And then you can almost kind of like pick it off, like if you put an enamel dot down, and then I just put a larger dot over it. So when you look at the final picture, look at that, and you'll see you can't even tell that I totally fixed it. Clear Wink Estella on everything that I could possibly put it on, and then card's done. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you are interested in seeing more of these products from Simon Says Stamp, they are going to be doing a hop Friday and Saturday. So lots of good projects, and I will be on the one on Saturday. So I'll see you guys then. Bye.